Great. Recording is on, and good evening to everyone, and welcome to the Design Talk number 56. It's a great pleasure to have today with us Mr. Naresh Khanna. Naresh Khanna has got a long association with IDC, especially those of us who had the privilege of studying in the early 90s. Uh, uh, Mr. Khanna was actually invited as part of the type or anything, any of the courses that Professor R K Joshi used to conduct. In fact, Mr. Khanna had a great association with IDC. In fact, along with Professor R K, Mr. Khanna had actually spearheaded some of the initial work that happened in terms of use of technology for design of fonts, and a lot of work which happened that time led to some of the setting up of the labs in CDAC, and where a lot of students from IDC post their masters had actually taken up projects and done some extensive work. And not only that, they also set a trend for students to actually contribute towards building the great repository of fonts from India. It's such a pleasure to have him today. But today the topic is going to be about the packaging industry, and of course, Mr. Naresh Khanna has been associated with printing and publishing, and he is of course the founder of the Indian Printer and Publisher that he set up in 1979. And over the last 4 decades, he has passionately been working in this area. And the latest, and I'm sure it's somewhere in the course of his organization's focus, there is a lot of work that has happened in the packaging domain also. And this particular topic today is extremely important, which Mr. Khanna will actually describe as to why it is important, and also tell why design is coming to what he calls as a very important moment to influence his entire packaging industry. Don't want to take too much of his time, but just let you know that Mr. Khanna is extremely passionate about the work that he does, and he has very interesting background. He's got a background in engineering, and the fact that he has spent a great deal of time in the industry also shows the kind of transformation that he has seen. And we are so fortunate to have him be part of our, not only part of IDC, but also take the time to share his views on design. Yeah.
Hello.
Over to you. You could start off.
Yeah, shall we begin? Okay. Thank you for the very kind introduction. Just to reiterate a bit about my association with IDC in the late 80s and early 90s, and possibly even after that on occasion. In fact, I went back there a few years ago with some designers from Europe, because we were doing a conference in Bombay about packaging design and innovation. I also started a packaging magazine called Packaging South Asia in 2007. And in every issue, we have actually covered the design and marketing of packaging. And we've been fortunate to have packaging developers like Deepak Manchanda write in it quite often, and sometimes Jitu Chaudhary and some other professional designers from Mumbai, etc. So packaging design is a rather fascinating topic in many ways. And similar to the issue of the implementation of Indian scripts using computers, or the implementation of non-Roman scripts, which was the title of an Electronic Commission conference in 1979, which brought a lot of us together. When I first went to meet R K Joshi, he was still working for Ulka Advertising Agency. And then somehow he was persuaded by my friend Tilokesh Mukherjee and Kirti Trivedi and others at IDC to quit his job, which was a very lucrative job. He was the head of design at Ulka, with the office in Nariman Point, and at one point he had a fancy house designed by Charles Correa, etc. He gave that up to go to teach at IDC and to develop the Indian language work. And he had a very, very deep background in that. I mean, he had been copying manuscripts in the Asiatic Library and palm scripts, etc. So he was a truly legendary individual in our culture. And he brought a great deal of authenticity to this. And there were many important conferences, global conferences held in IDC in those days, Akshar Yog and several others, which brought a lot of good thinking. And then ultimately, RK also did a very important exhibition at the National Center for NCPA in Delhi, which was a global calligraphy exhibition, which had never been done. Anyway, so that was quite important work because we were able to create some resources which were actually used by the technology. And some of the people were hired by CDAC and others were hired all over the place. And many are still in Indian language software development for publishing systems. And so that was my association with IDC in those days. And in fact, some of the students used to even come and intern in my office in Delhi. So today's topic, which I will now jump to, is towards a toolkit for sustainability-led packaging design. The idea is that designers are very often brought into this whole issue of sustainability at a late stage or as an afterthought. And they are often seen simply as people who are good at shapes, colors, graphics, typography, essentially decoration. And in India especially, there is a sharp separation in the packaging supply chain, in the packaging development chain, between the packaging designers and the packaging developers. And that, to my mind and to the mind of my friend Nitu Chaudhary, has to go. The idea is that how can we make the packaging design profession itself more sustainable so that people can earn a full-time living doing that, rather than packaging design being an extension of rebranding sometimes for a product. And for that, certain tools have to be developed, certain training has to be developed, and education has to be developed. And this is a particularly good time for packaging designers to gain some knowledge and to show leadership, because packaging itself is in a crisis. Specifically, plastic packaging is in a crisis because of the issues of sustainability. So let me first set the scene. There are many new developments in packaging. This event, this talk today is not really about too much about the innovations in packaging, etc. But I'll just go over some of them to which border on issues of sustainability and which can lead us to our main topic, which is of developing a toolkit for designers so that they can get more involved in the product design and the product managers and the packaging supply chain on the conceptual side. So some of the trends and innovations currently are, that packaging is becoming active packaging, active and intelligent. Packaging is learning to sing and dance. Packaging is learning to talk back. And this has to do with QR codes, with chips being embedded, with all kinds of decorations which have digital information embedded in the packaging. So there is overt digital information being embedded in packaging graphics, etc., which makes it track and trace. It makes it anti-counterfeiting. It makes it possible also to communicate. It makes it possible for a brand owner to track the purchase of a product through the cloud. It makes it possible for that brand owner to know who has bought it, what time they have bought it, And if that person interacts with the package by using the QR code with their smartphone, they start a process of engagement. So brand owners are very big on that. And that is something that we are not going to really discuss much today. But there are many, many innovations. One of the innovations which is relevant to today's topic of sustainability is that some brand owners have actually changed the product and the package for sustainability. For instance, Godrej recently showed that instead of marketing a full bottle of shampoo in a plastic container, they will now give a pouch of that shampoo, which can be diluted in a container with 200 ml of water, so that the container itself is eliminated and the consumer can reuse older containers of shampoo and simply mix their own shampoo. And that is a reasonably interesting saving of plastic, an approach to sustainability. So I'm just pointing that out because many innovations can be done in that respect also. But basically, what we want to do today is talk about the circular economy and circular packaging that can be collected after use, it can be sorted, and it can be recycled. Now, that concept of packaging becoming circular, or any product or any segment of the economy becoming circular, is a fairly old concept. The Japanese started working on that in 1991, and they passed in 1999 something called the Circular Economy Law. And essentially, this is a graphic I have from a presentation that a friend of mine made in 2014 in Tokyo Pack. And the Japanese are actually, to my mind, and I have seen them even after the tsunami, how when they didn't have electricity or they had less electricity, how they, even the hotels became warmer, they used less air conditioning, they reduced their labels to half the size, the sleeve labels on various beverages. So the Japanese, and I've seen them in the factories also, how they reuse oil, which is, for actual manufacturing. They're extremely conscious of environmental issues. Basically, what this diagram shows is that everything in Japan, all the resources are measured. There are the imported resources, there are the domestic resources. And what this is saying is that in a particular year, the raw material inputs to the entire economy were about 1.6 billion tons, metric tons. Okay? And these were then, some of the products produced were exported, other products were used in the domestic economy. Even the resources were imported resources as well as domestic resources. Everything was quantified. Everything was measured. Like how much iron ore was imported, how much coal was imported, how much coke was imported, how much steel was produced, how much steel went into the cars. I mean, the entire process was monitored. And then out of those products, how much of those products were actually recycled. And after recycling and after recycling again, how much was left over, which was actually waste which could not be recycled. That means it became either hazardous waste or heavy metals which have to be buried or something like that. And if you see that if you start out with inputs of 1.6 billion tons, only 29 million tons went to landfill. Okay? That means the waste that was sent into the recycling was about 583 million tons. I mean, and so there is a metric on the whole thing. Inputs of 1.6 billion tons, 1.591 million tons is 1.6 billion tons, and total waste that could not be at all recycled, which had to be safely disposed of as hazardous waste or whatever, unrecyclable, was only 29 million tons. So you can see it's very, very significant thing. This is a 2014 diagram. So the law in Japan was enacted in 1999. And as I said, all inputs are quantified, outputs are quantified, even energy is measured, everything, all the inputs are measured. But packaging as an industry is a subset of the circular economy. So there doesn't have to be a special law for packaging in Japan. The packaging law is part of the circular economy law. Packaging is one more industry, one more product, which has to subscribe to the overall law. So the issue in enacting these kinds of scenarios is essentially get better information, quantification, inputs and outputs. This is happening gradually in India. The data is improving. I know because we also have a research company. And when we started out doing the research in 1999, everybody said that all the research we are doing is impossible. And it pretty much was. But now, to a large extent, many of the things are can be quantified, although much of the information that you get on the internet is wrong, okay? Because there's a lot of confusion about what you are actually describing. But actually, it's not impossible in India to now gather better and better data and information. Very often, the data is biased. For instance, the plastic packaging industry will give some information about recycling, which is perhaps inaccurate. So beyond data and precise numbers, the important thing is to set up waste streams for collection, sorting, and putting into the appropriate recycling stream for lateral or upcycling. This is very different than some people call everything recycling. According to the dilution of the plastic waste management rules, which were first put forward in 2016, they were diluted in 2018. Even burning plastic is considered recycling because you are using it for energy. Okay, so we are specifically talking today about not that kind of recycling, not melting to use as part of a road tar or making up just what's called downcycling, but to actually recycle laterally. That means to recreate or to create inputs for the same product that you started with. That means flexible packaging, for instance, so plastic containers for packaging should be recycled into plastic containers or into plastic pouches, flexible packaging. So this is the key issue that we wish to discuss today. So why focus on the problems of plastic packaging and particularly flexible packaging? Okay, plastic packaging in general is an issue, but today I'd like to focus on flexible packaging because this is the packaging which is most irritating to everybody. Because of down gauging, making it thinner and thinner, plastic carry bags being available for free, it is a blight on the landscape. Because it has been down gauged and because it is so efficient, it doesn't disappear, it spoils the entire countryside. So it's an eyesore, it blocks drains, etc., etc. Plus the other issue is that while in the rest of the world, because of the discussion of plastic, and the problem with recycling plastic, which is a global problem, by the way. Okay, it is not restricted to India at all, and India is in fact, in a way, catching up from where it was 10 years ago. Now one could say it's only 5 years behind the Europeans in some of the discussions. So while the rest of the world is actually expecting to reduce the use of plastic packaging, India in particular is adding huge capacities right now. Even as we speak, in the last 2.5 years, a dozen big lines, BOPP lines, polypropylene, and polyester lines, and PE lines have been added by, at least 12 or 15 of the major manufacturers like Jindal Polyfilms, Cosmos, Chirag Films. There are many, many companies, Ester, Uflex. So they've added already about a dozen lines. These are expensive lines, and they take, even if you order a line today, you will not get it for about 8 months, 10 months. There's such a rush on these lines because the same lines are used also for making films for batteries, and also for making back film for solar panels. So these film lines are in huge demand in Asia, particularly. China is buying these lines, but China is buying these lines mostly for making batteries. But Indians are buying these lines. They've already bought a dozen, and another dozen are in the pipeline now. So that means we're adding by 2025, just in this category of film production, about 900,000 metric tons. And in addition, in India, every year there are 100 blown film lines, which are 3-layer lines, 5-layer lines, 7-layer lines, in which packaging companies themselves make the film in-house. The other kind of machines I was describing are mass production machines, where the film is supplied to the packaging company for printing and then converting into pouches and other products, trays, etc., etc. Plastic trays are also made out of film. 7-layer film is then molded into plastic trays, which is more and more widely used for food products, etc. And food products are really the key issue in India. Because on the one hand, you have the second largest producer of food in the world, fruit and vegetables in the world, largest producer of milk in the world, and you have fruit rotting in the fields. So naturally, a great part of the wealth of the society is being destroyed. And that land is going to waste, the water is going to waste, the seed is going to waste, the fertilizer is going to waste. So if you can convert that food into, put it into the food supply chain through cold storages, shock cold storages, there are many things that need to be done. Although the Indians have a preference for fresh food, and there's nothing wrong with that. That means packaging is not the solution to saving food, actually. Okay, that must be remembered. Sometimes packaging projects itself as the hero, as if packaging is going to save the world. That I don't think is true. But the issue of food processing and packaging is important in India. And the hygienic delivery of food. The key issue in food is, of course, to deliver the maximum amount of protein to the maximum population at a reasonable price. And packaging does play a role in that. So a huge amount of packaging film is being added in India. And this could become a very, very dangerous situation. And on the other side, the government is becoming more and more aware of this. So the government has been passing plastic waste management rules, which is started in first issued in 2016. Unfortunately, the 2016 law was not enacted. The amendment in 2018 basically diluted the rules of 2016. And then there were some other rules issued, etc. And the rules are developing. And that means the government officials are being educated in this. But the most significant recent amendment to the rules is the EPR regulation, the extended product responsibility, producer responsibility, extended producer responsibility, which is in February of 2022. This has been issued by the government. And more or less, this is a kind of a rule or a law which is trying to catch up with Europe. Because in Europe, you have what is called the C-Flex rules, which are that everything should be recyclable practically. All plastic packaging should be recyclable by 2025. And then there is another higher level of rules in Europe called the Recyclass, which is a certification which is stricter than the recycling, the C-Flex rules. Now, we are playing catch up in India, but the EPR guidelines are going quite far in making the brand owners and the packaging industry aware of the need to shape up. Okay, so this is something where packaging designers, we believe, must learn and must get involved and must get engaged. It's not going to be very easy. Okay, some of these documents are heavy going, but they are by and large scientific. That means they have divided the different packaging into containers, flexible films, into various categories. And as you people know, most of you know, from 1st of July, there has already been the order against the use of single-use plastics in many, many categories. So these are bringing home to people that this government is not just standing by, but government is engaged in this problem, and government is actually committed. The government has made various global commitments also, which are quite ambitious, frankly. And the key problem that the government and the industry and the society face really is in the collection of solid waste, the collection and sorting of solid waste. Then comes the issue of recycling and design for recycling. So this, I just put these up here to show you that these are some of the indication of the extended producer responsibility targets. And just look at the dates, which they say 23, 24, 100%. You know, in another category, 27, 28, 80%. Now, minimum level of recycling. What will these rules mean? These rules will mean that if you are a producer, that means if you are a brand owner or a packaging converter, and you are producing this kind of plastic waste or plastic packaging, and you are not able to recycle it, you will have to pay a penalty, cash, to the extent that you fail to meet the target. Okay, if you meet 50% of the target, then the balance 50% you have to pay as a penalty. If you go to places like Maharashtra, even today, where there is a ban on plastics of various kinds, the brand owners are already paying money to people to collect waste. Unfortunately, they don't know right now what is happening to that waste. So, and the recycling part is not happening also. So, recycling of plastic waste can be, mechanical or chemical. And there are many companies now actively in India working on recycling as an industry. Gemini Corp is a company which is based in Belgium, which has several things in India. Recycle is a company also, which is making all these companies have websites. They're making a lot of claims. There are now about, apart from the NGOs, there are, you can say, about 40 or 50 companies in India in the recycling industry. If you go to a list of the 100 top recycling companies in the world, four Indian companies are in that list. Okay, and many of the other companies in other parts of the world are actually run by Indians also, which means they're aware of the issue, although they may not be active in the country. Now, the laws are coming into force. You've got the recyclers, but the recyclers everywhere, not only in India, but in Europe also, they're facing a basic problem that they are not getting enough waste. Okay, that's one problem, which comes from the issue that we need to sort out the collection and the sorting and getting the right kind of feedstock. Then in recycling itself, there are two kinds of recycling, mechanical recycling. But mechanical recycling only works on a single kind of plastic. If you have a mixed use plastic, which most of our laminates are, then it's very difficult to mechanically recycle that laterally or upward, or to create something which is then becomes a recyclate, which can be used in a new plastic of a similar level. And chemical recycling is in a not yet developed stage. And although you can melt down plastic and create with pyrolysis some kinds of oils, etc., it's not very economically feasible right now. But it is a kind of a great dream to have chemical recycling in the future. It's a little bit like nuclear fusion, okay, where you're hoping that you'll be able to do some kind of chemical recycling and put it in a cracker like an oil refinery and take out the different polymers at different levels. But it is still at the kind of a dream level, I would say. So for mechanical recycling, the mixed plastic laminates, you can separate them, you can delaminate them. And there are people now developing various primers that when you make the laminate itself, you will put in a kind of an adhesive or a primer, which will allow you to separate it. You will even be able to de-ink it. Ink is also an issue. Or the other solution, which is gaining currency in Europe as well as in India now, is to use a laminate of a single polymer with less than 5% of something else, whether it's a metallized layer or nylon or EVOH, which are basically used in a laminate sandwich to create a barrier for oxygen or for moisture, which are both important at different levels for different kinds of food products, particularly, and in some cases for pharmaceutical products. So what is a flexible laminate? I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but basically a flexible Laminate is layers of different films. In some cases, it's layers of the same kind of polymer also. And in India, what you try to do is you try to down gauge everything very often. For instance, edible oil requires a certain kind of protection from moisture, certain kind of protection from oxygen. In edible oil, you could say, apart from milk, is one of the biggest commodities that is packaged in India, food commodities. What happens in India is that instead of using a 5-layer film, for instance, or a 5-layer laminate for edible oil, very often only a 3-layer will be used. Why? Because edible oil flies off the shelf so fast that the brand owner thinks he doesn't need to give it the quality that would give it a shelf life of 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months in the supply chain. So this is a kind of substandard risk-taking on food products that happens in India as it is. Okay. Now this also will slowly come under the purview of the FSSAI, etc., food standards, safety, etc., their labeling and other kind of standards. So there are a lot of things going on at work which are going to make it essential for us to learn this whole activity and technology. Basically, a flexible laminate will have a outer layer. An outer layer will be coated. Outer layer will be appropriate for moving swiftly in a filling and sealing machine. It will have a low coefficient of friction. So the machinability is very important for an outer layer. Then the inner layer will be in contact with the food. Other layers in between will be used for barrier, like it may be a metallized aluminum layer, or it may be nylon or EVOH. So those could be a barrier layer. And the inside layer, in order to seal it on a filling and sealing machine, needs to have a low melt temperature. So that's why very often PE is used on the inside. Okay. So what I've shown a little bit of a example on the right. Now the example on the right is not an example of a mixed polymer. The example on the right is of a monopolymer laminate. Okay. Which is a very special new kind of laminate, which is made by stretching PE in a machine direction, which is MDO, machine direction orientation, etc. And it uses metallizing, it uses ink, adhesive, all below 5%, so that when this is remelted, this can be used as a material for lateral recycling. I mean, this material, if it's used for a pouch, can be used 10 times, 12 times for making a similar pouch. Okay. The ink sometimes, because ink uses heavy metals, ink is not stable, it will color the recyclate slightly. But if that recyclate layer is used for making the film inside slightly gray, it may not matter. So this is basically a flexible laminate has to have certain layers for being printable, certain layers for barrier properties, and other layers for being able to be sealed properly. And together, this is how pouches and all kinds of things are made. Okay. Sometimes you will use a laminate and a certain kind of metallizing, which will even make the laminate transparent, such as Alox technology. So you will get a rice packet where you can see the rice, etc. Although it is a metallized laminate, but it becomes transparent while it is being coated. So this is what it is. So then we come to the heart of the matter, is that we need to create a toolkit. And once we understand what are the laminates, once we've got a brief from a brand owner, we need to understand how these things can be recycled. And there is already a packaging design for recycling guide. This is a 60-page guide, which actually looks at every kind of packaging, paper packaging, glass packaging, plastic packaging, etc. And this is available on the net. And it is quite illustrative, it's quite easy to read, and you can go to it immediately for the product that you need. And this is how, and there's a how to use guide also, a 5-page guide of how to use it. And so this is actually you can use it. These are the kind of materials it discusses: metal packaging, glass packaging, paper, PET, and also on the left you have liquid packaging cartons, like aseptic liquid packaging, like Tetra Pak, which is used for fruity, etc., which is now being widely used in India for alcoholic beverages also. By the way, that kind of packaging is almost impossible to recycle. It is being made into a lot of greenwashing about it, and basically it's only used for making furniture or boards by compacting it. Same, basically this is just the guide how to use it. But now, as you notice, that all these guides are used in conjunction with a country of choice table, which actually shows you in your respective country or region. It has to be countrywide actually, which shows you in your country what is the waste stream. And this has now been made available for 28 countries. I'm showing you the guide for waste stream guide for Germany and Brazil. And there is no guide currently available for India. But in light of this discussion today, I have hazarded, in conjunction with some friends in the packaging industry, to make a proposed guide, which we will then take to various industry stakeholders and formalize. So as you see, even in Germany, certain things are no-go. That means either there is no waste stream available, for instance, flexible PET is not available. Low molded PET, which is PET bottles that you use for Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and various beverages, those are collected in India also quite widely, and they are there. So Brazil, I chose Brazil because Brazil in many ways is a little bit like India, but Brazil seems to have a very good system for collecting composite beverage cartons, which India does not yet. This is the packaging waste stream guide that I have developed so far for India. And I have taken the liberty here to also show what is the recycling possibility. What you see in India is that in some cases there is a possibility of recycling, good recycling, but the collection is not good. The waste stream is not good. And in many other cases like polystyrene, etc., your kabadiwala will not touch it. He will not pick it up. This is the stuff in which, refrigerators and many things are packed or were packed, televisions, etc., that white foam-like substance. That's an absolute no-no. So basically, in order to develop the toolkit and the understanding, these kind of tools will have to be refined, developed, agreed upon, and published. So how will this actually work? What am I actually wanting to encourage the packaging designers or the designers to do? First of all, I'm wanting to encourage the designers to become packaging designers, professional packaging designers, full-time packaging designers, which means not just as part of your design activities, although I appreciate that design in general is also a profession and it is also a way of practicing design. And some people prefer to do it that way. But there is a need for packaging design specialists. And you have firms in India who do that, like in Pune, etc. In fact, it's a company now in not only in different parts of India, but also has an office in Singapore. So you do have people who have taken packaging design to the next level in India also as a profession, sustainable profession. And but what happens in the design and product loop is you have a product manager who thinks that now I want to redo this package. I want to make this for a younger demographic. I would like Amul decided to make Amul Cool, that we will make milkshakes for younger people. It's a byproduct of our industry, milk, and we will do this. We will come up with a whole theme of youth, etc. We'll decorate it with surfboards and scooters, etc. We'll put it in a metal can, aluminum can, which earlier was thought of only something for very wealthy people. the use of aluminum cans. Now, as you see, it has become mainstream in India for beer, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, milkshakes, and various other drinks. So, so that is, and the capacity in India to manufacture that kind of beverage can has also improved with the world's largest companies. Well, in fact, all the global companies in the world in the packaging industry are already in India. Okay, so they are seeing this as a very, very great opportunity. So then what happens is that the product design team gives the packaging designer or the packaging design agency their brief. And what I'm suggesting is that in this brief, it should not only be the purchasing manager, it should not only be the product manager, there should also be a sustainability officer. Now, many of these brand owners have made big pledges on their websites about what they are going to do by 2025, what they're going to do by 2030, what they're going to do by 2040. And even if they are global companies, by and large, they are not following this in India yet. One of the reasons they are not following it is they say, we have competition. If the competitor is not following it, there is no government law, why should we follow it? So that is one excuse. But as everyone knows, there is a first mover advantage. And in many cases, some of the companies are going forward and they are looking at the sustainability issues. So the design brief should include information about the polymers, the waste streams, the sustainability plans, etc. And then after some of the design work, the material design work, the product, the packaging development, it goes back to that whole cycle for test marketing, legal team. And according to me, it should also go to the sustainability team. And how is this packaging going to be actually, what is the consumer going to do with it? How does the consumer know what to do with it? What is the mark on the packaging which says, encourages the consumer to actually put it in a separate sorting or waste collection bin or process so that it can go for the correct recycling stream. So essentially what we are asking today is, what can designers do? First thing is that designers must learn more than just to accept the design brief. They must learn what are the properties of the materials required, what are the materials that the brand owner is looking at, and what are the the packaging designer must understand, the oxygen barrier needed, the moisture barrier needed, and must understand that there are people, that all these projects are collaborative projects where the packaging designer, the product manager, the brand owner, and the packaging producer or the film producer have to be brought into the same room. And the packaging system has to be created. It's no longer good enough to create a pack. You have to create a packaging system. And you have to, in order to do this, you have to establish what are the EPR rules that will be applied to this product and this packaging. And you have to discuss the waste streams and the recycling streams. You have to also discuss, of course, the compliances on safety and the other legal requirements, etc. And then you have to do this, you have to follow the guide for packaging design for India, which means the waste streams guide that we are trying to construct. And so that it can be established that, yes, there is a waste stream for this, there is no waste stream for that. Okay. And then further than that, the packaging designer can take it forward into the culture by designing the symbols for the waste and recycling streams, and also include the various codes, which can be then machine readable or cell phone readable for the consumer if they want to know more, both about the product as well as the packaging, and also other kinds of spectral optical codes for automatic sorting of the films and the PET bottles, etc., in automated waste streams. And the other thing the designers can use is post-consumer recycled films. That means in your bill of materials, in your design of the packaging, you must say how much PCR can we use to establish the properties that you require for this packaging. For instance, if it's only dal or salt or some other things, although you may need some some moisture barriers. You may not need the barriers of high barriers. You will not need aluminum. You will not need EVOH and nylon. And so you could do with a fairly mid-level laminate, and which could be more easily recycled. Or you could use inks which are stable and don't turn black in recycling. So these are some of the things. The other problem that's going on is that there is a lot of talk, even in the waste management rules of the government, about biodegradable films. I just wanted to share with you that biodegradable films generally are made by adding some kind of a master batch or additive. And once you add that, it's no longer recyclable. And too often, by biodegradable, we means that we will only put it somewhere in a landfill or something where it will turn into small fragments. So biodegradable could actually turn out to be a very dangerous trend that we need to be more educated about, etc. And similarly, there are many other greenwashing techniques of brand owners, which we should avoid. One of the typical techniques of the plastic industry is to use life cycle analysis to show that plastic is so much lighter, uses less transportation, and uses less this. They also use that opportunity to attack paper, that making paper uses so much water, etc. So many trees are felled, etc. Not realizing that trees are actually a renewable resource. And trees, in fact, you should cut trees. If you don't cut trees, the forest does not regenerate. Okay? To have old trees only in a forest is very bad. So harvesting of trees is a very healthy practice. And the Indian paper mills have proven to be great masters of producing new sapling varieties. Bhadrachalam has produced over 102 varieties of new kinds of saplings. And it gives away grafts, so it gives them at a very low price, and is able to maintain a total supply chain of raw material of fiber from very poor land as a side income for poor farmers. So this is a rather remarkable kind of thing. So what I'm saying is bad-mouthing paper does not help plastic. So avoid this kind of greenwashing and avoid life cycle analysis, which is facile, and look at the overall sustainability and recycling of the process. Because plastic basically cannot be destroyed. It lasts forever. And there is even some question whether plastic can at all be recycled even. In the recent Nairobi conference, it was pretty much stated that it is very, very difficult to recycle plastic. And there is 50 million tons of mixed plastic right now in the world, which cannot be recycled. So it's a huge problem. So do not underestimate it. But there are other things that can be done. As a community, if, for instance, all the shampoo pouches, all the small hair oil pouches, everything could be standardized to use the same laminate and the same format, it would improve the value for the waste collectors. Right now, the system of waste collection we have, the lighter and smaller the packaging, the more worthless it is for collection. And that becomes a problem. So my last suggestion is that normally the brand owner will say he wants or she wants shelf impact, from concept to shelf impact. That's the designer's job. But I think for us, equally important now is the environmental impact. And this is where designers can show a great deal of leadership. Does that make sense? Have I gone on too long?
Absolutely makes sense. And thank you so much. I think we'll, whatever time that we have, we'll just open it for questions. Who is going first? I already see somebody raised their hand, and those of you who are not probably, please push the hand icon on so that I will know who is in queue. Please go ahead. It's open for the forum.
See, my question to the designers in the audience is that, are you already aware of all this?
Hey, Gokul, go ahead.
Yeah, very, very detailed study. Really appreciate the depth to which and the commitment with which you've been working on this. Trying to understand, if at all, there is any chance of glass coming back as a food contact packaging material. or is it lost forever?
Glass is collected in India quite well. Okay, especially beer bottles and alcoholic beverages is collected very well in India. In fact, the problem in glass is that the consumer doesn't want to give it up. They want to reuse it at home.
Okay.
So, but glass collection is there, and in any kind of reuse or recycling, there's a huge saving of carbon footprint.
Okay.
Huge saving. Okay.
So one more. Is there any viable alternative for this never-ending trend of trying to drink out of a PET bottle?
Yes, the first solution is that the government must supply clean drinking water to everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the simplest solution. It's actually ridiculous what we are doing.
Yeah.
Because you go to many, you should be able to drink tap water.
Yes.
You go to a fountain in the middle of a European city, and you can drink that water out of the fountain. In the same fountain, they have once a year, they have wine also. So the point is that there is the basic, these are the social issues that we must take up, I think, even as designers.
Yeah.
That why cannot we design a water supply?
Yeah. So just one more. I just wanted to understand from you, if at all, is there anything called as a food grade plastic?
Yes. There are plastics which are appropriate for food contact.
Okay.
There is the law in Europe right now has not agreed that recycled plastics can be used for food contact. But and there are hazards in plastics like bisphenol A, etc., which means they are not recommended for use as baby bottles, etc., baby feeding bottles, etc. But yes, plastic can be food grade and can be used properly for food, eating directly out of food.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Stephen Smiley, please go ahead.
Hi, Naresh. Thank you. A great presentation. Just the one comment I have is I have been fighting for years to get packaging engineers with graphic communication people out of the same college. And the colleges are either a business school or an art school, and they refuse to make these brand owners, graphic communication people that we really want, that are designers too. So the two are kept separate. And you're asking us to bring in some sustainability stuff, which I think would really be awesome, but it almost seems to live in three different worlds from the education we get today.
Yeah, that's interesting. But you see, from my memory of IDC at IIT Powai, many of the students were actually engineering graduates, architects. They were people who could handle it. Okay, and I have experience with designers who have learned software. So this is, I think, what is happening is that in a place like IDC, where you have a master's course in design, you must give a 1-week course or a 2-week course at least in packaging design. This is just one part of it. There would be other aspects to it also. And you would be able to bring in industry people, polymer producers, plastic scientists, recycling guys, because none of this, by the way, can be done without collaboration. There is no packaging that can be done now without talking to the recycler. How can he recycle? Can he recycle? The ease of recycling. It's absolutely critical. So I think that kind of education can be done in a place like IDC Powai or IDCs around the country, where you have that kind of scientific approach and a fairly rigorous approach. I remember, approach of documenting and defining what you're saying. And this is not, very abstract. Design now is this is architecture. You have to know your materials. How can you design a building anymore which is not green? So it's very similar. I think it can be done.
Ankur, Ravan, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Naresh, so when I look at circular economy, a lot of times people pick it up as a like a recycling entity or a term used for extracting the resources, whereas nobody talks about extending the life of the product in use. Like if cars could work for like 30 years rather
Yeah.
than being recycled. Any points on that as to how could that be one quantified or encouraged even when we are looking at food utensil waste or packaging? Has there been an idea of like extended use packaging?
Yeah, there is. One of the things is to design packaging so that it can be reused, if not as packaging, but as something else in the house. So that or in the place of work. So that is also a design challenge. Certainly, that can be done. Packaging that can be converted into some other kind of useful product. But packaging itself, uh, if it is made of recyclable material, can be recycled 10, 12, 15 times. And that is the best use of it, rather than because there you can then define the stream, you can define the recycling stream, you can define the intention and the purpose and make it appropriate for being recycled 10, 12 times. So yes, you're right that there is a possibility of doing that, of repurposing and reusing packaging. I'm sure creative things will come, where you can make um, uh, like we used to make toys out of packaging in the old days. In fact, I have not shown that slide, but I wanted to, of very famous sculptor in Africa, Bodis Kingeles, who used packaging to design cities, fantasy cities. And that's actually a very important concept because it shows uh, the the role that packaging plays in the mind, in the cultural mind. Where packaging, uh, the shapes of packaging, the materials of packaging can be used to recreate a city. The Japanese also use old reused packaging to make sculptures, and it has to do with uh, the art of thinking about our lives in the context of the city. The supermarket is a city, in a way.
I agree with that. So my question was move. It wasn't about how to find alternate uses to
Yeah.
packaging waste. I was talking about just making sure that it doesn't reach the dustbin at all. Like
Yes.
I was at a conference long back where I had suggested that there were these very thin plastic-based cups that everybody was using. People just
Yeah.
sort of taking a sip or maybe taking one drink and then
Yeah.
throwing them off. I
Yeah.
just recommended why can't we use like polycarbonate thicker plastic, which is also equally recyclable. But
Yeah.
then as soon as we switched for the next day, we switched onto those cups, we saw that people are not throwing the cups away. They're making
Yeah.
sure that they're getting refills on the same cup
Yeah.
again and again. And products and packaging are, like even when we look at a refrigerator, it's a packaging of a compressor, right? So even if a refrigerator is being used for, let's say, 30 years, or the EPR
Yeah.
laws
Yeah.
sort of combine the extended life,
Yeah.
I think that component of longevity in circular economy calculations would really help. That's the line that I was taking.
Yeah, that's very valid, especially now. I mean, my car has been uh, sold away for junk or something because it was more than 10 years old. It was a perfectly good car, okay, and had only 50,000 kilometers. So it makes no sense to throw away a functional product. On the one hand, on the other hand, as you are saying, there are many cultural practices that we need to adapt, um, and which we need to straighten out. Because to me, it makes no sense to have billions of bottles that we are producing, PET bottles we're producing for water. And when, when on the one hand, people don't have drinking water at all, and the other hand, and this should be coming out of the tap. And so these are, you're right, we should be, but the basic concept that the leading packaging companies who are concerned with sustainability are using is that this packaging should be laterally recycled, or the consumer recycle it should go back into packaging, post-consumer recycled uh, material. And whenever you design a package, you must use some PCR. And that will start the whole chain of, and that's being done in India, by the way.
Yeah.
You have a company like DS, these people in Noida, they are making confectionery, and their jars are made partly out of recycled material. You have companies like Uflex who are making label face stock out of recycled stuff. They're supplying to a lot of label stock suppliers. So scientific work has been done in India, although that film has been manufactured in Kentucky. So there is no shortage of talent to get in on this great global problem, both in terms of materials and in terms of design.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Suresh. Maybe this is the last question. Suresh, go ahead. Suresh?
Sorry, the mic was off. Sorry. Just one last question. So in recent times, we have been talking a lot about, government also come up with a rule on single-use packaging. What are your thoughts on that? And is it a sustainable thing? Because on one side, we talk about it and we don't have a solution to that problem. With most of the MNCs still using a lot from oils to shampoos to things, and they don't seem to. There's not enough research done to know, is there an alternative to that kind of a thing?
Yes, there are alternatives. And basically what is going to happen is that instead of packaging being from concept to shelf, packaging is going to have to be from concept to recycling. That means the supply chain has to increase. And right now we are paying the price for not recycling, for throwing it away. We are destroying our country, we're destroying our world, we're destroying our planet. So that cost has to come has to be front loaded into the packaging. And
because one surprising thing was, they said ki now less than this much thickness would not be allowed. In fact, they're telling us to make thicker. So
yes,
it's a bit contradictory to what we really want to do.
No, see, the psychology on thickness in India is a peculiarly Indian problem, because you are not having an organized method of waste collection. You are relying on young, poor children to collect waste. And then you are greenwashing yourself as a brand owner, saying that we are very efficient in India in waste recycling or waste collection. Okay, which is not true, in fact. Okay, so this is a social problem, and these people will not pick up waste which is too light. It takes 1,000 carrier bags to make a kilo.
Yeah.
And what do you get for that? 10 rupees or 5 rupees. So you want to increase the weight of that because you are creating a band-aid for a social problem. I mean, you're not setting up a proper collection stream. You're not collecting up. When you do proper sorting at home, like the down-to-earth people try to do when they said no landfills, not in my backyard, they totally wanted to ban landfills in India. And they created a campaign in various cities where they were actually, in cities like Pune and Mysore, there were 42 different kinds of waste that the city commissioners came up with. And some of those were recycled, some of those were composted, etc., etc. So I think.
So would that be, so are you saying that's I'm not so sure a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you increase the thickness, the chances
yes,
of
you'll increase the value. Theoretically, you'll increase the value. But actually, it's a band-aid. It's not going to solve the problem.
Okay.
You're not, by doubling the thickness, you're not doubling the value. You're going to double the value only when you create something for which there is a ready buyer, where it can be turned into feedstock for packaging. Okay. Where people know that this is a shampoo or this is a Colgate tube, and this is high value because it is going to go into waste stream X or Y or Z, and which I am going to get 30 rupees a kilo or 20 rupees a kilo. Even so, that is, you have to create that value, and you have to create, you cannot expect, first of all, you have all kinds of other social issues there, caste issues, etc., etc. We are denying that we are actually creating waste. So you have to overcome that and actually glorify waste and create branded waste and sorted waste and valuable waste. You have to create value in the waste, and treat those people very, very well, because they are going to save the planet.
Yeah.
And
I'm surprised that you mentioned that, the single-use plastic, there are alternatives, but I'm not seeing
Yeah.
much of it in
no. See, the law when it was about to come into force, many of the people tried to protest. Tetra Pak indirectly, Uflex indirectly. They even tried to deflect the saying that we cannot have enough paper straws in India. We are going to
Yeah.
have to import the machines. It's going to take 1 year, etc., etc. I called up the guys who make the machines, who sell the machines in Faridabad. He said, we've been selling paper straw machines for 5 years. Five years ago, I saw in Gurgaon in a exhibition, JK had a paper for a straw. In January, I met a company which makes adhesive for the paper straws. So there was no problem in manufacturing paper straws. Only thing is the paper straws cost 10 times what a plastic straw costs.
Yeah.
So that was the issue, and that has to be overcome. You can't use and once it happened, there was not a squeak out of anybody actually.
No,
So many things shifted over. You you fly on an airplane, they had a wooden spoon, a wooden fork. They were able to switch over quite a bit. They had some legacy stuff that they tried to slowly push.
But do you think that the oil packaging that all this, cardia and this and that,
Yeah.
does it not come under a single-use category, or is it being defined differently now?
No, it is single-use category, but it should be standardized. You can't have somebody using 3-layer and somebody using 5-layer, different polymer, using polyester, mixed laminate, which can't be recycled. You must move them to a single polymer laminate and use a proper 5-layer with a proper shelf life, and have a collection stream for that. Okay, like Amul claims that none of their pouches are visible anywhere, that they collect them all. Now, I don't know if that's true, but Mother Dairy, at least in Delhi, they have a little collection bin next to the booth. But people are putting everything into it. These are cultural issues. I mean, anywhere in the world, even in our airports now, you've got three bins.
Correct.
Okay, but what is actually happening? Are they going into 3 waste streams? And what you need is 5 bins. So now it's begun. It's become an industry. Okay, manufacturing those bins is an industry. Collection waste is an industry, and it will happen. It has to happen. I don't see an alternative into facing up to the fact that we create a lot of solid waste, and we cannot use landfills.
Okay, I know this discussion can be really interesting. We're 8 minutes past our usual closing time, but I have to thank on behalf of all of us, Mr. Naresh Khanna, for such an excellent expose, I should say. I mean, there is a high level of education to some of us who are not so familiar with this entire process. And those who are already familiar, I think you opened up a much larger layer of the extent in which they can play the game with a lot more intensity. And it's actually a session with enormous amount of information. And I'm sure that it'll take a while for us to grasp and understand, and then see ways in which we can contribute. I think 2 or 3 things that you pointed out, especially one on the design curriculum for packaging, is something sure some of the attendees here who are probably faculty should be able to carry this and probably come back to you with further discussion if there is something that they could work out. And otherwise, I think we also made a lot of us conscious about not only for those who are going to be directly involved, but also those who, I mean, we are also consumers, and probably we look at the bins very differently from this point onwards. And in all, I think you packaged the whole thing so well. And thank you so much for your time. I know you've been very busy with your other commitments, but still taking time for this is amazing. And I thank all the attendees who took time off to be part of this. The video of this session, we will post it tomorrow. And on behalf of all of us, I give a big thank you to Mr. Naresh Khanna and also hoping to see you all again in the next upcoming sessions. Thank you. And I'm going to switch off the recording. And if you want to stay back or some small chat, you could continue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No, I just wanted to say one